Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the State of the AI Union. I am joined by Stephen Steers today, who is president of the Steers Consulting Group. And they don't teach you sales at school. They don't teach you how to be confident. They don't teach you how to be out in the world and how to make a way for yourself. But that is what Stephen is here for. Stephen is a consultant, keynote speaker, and now the author of Superpower Storytelling and the creator of Context Selling. He has advised more than 1,000 companies from over 40 plus countries, including teams from Google, Nike, HEC, Paris Business School, and Entrepreneurs Organization. That was a mouthful, but forget everything you know about sales. Increasing conversation is really about listening, learning, and connecting through stories, because stories close the sale. It's never the conversation. So, Stephen, thanks for being on the show. And is there anything else that you want to tell us about storytelling and about sales before we kind of dive in here?
So many things, but before any of that, thank you for having me, Laura. It's great to be here with you today. Looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, cool. So let's talk about sales and storytelling outside of AI. This podcast is about AI, but before that, let's kind of rewind a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
How do the best people sell? And why is storytelling the thing that separates the good reps from the best?
I don't think the best salespeople sell at all. They help people make better decisions. So I don't know about you, but if I was to check my DMs right now, I have a bunch of pushy people telling me to get on a phone call with them, that they've read my profile, that I'm a fellow tax professional, which is obviously not true. There's just so much people, so many people just pushing stuff and selling to you, right? That's where it doesn't feel right. My mentor, and I love when he says this. He says, if it feels like you're selling, you're doing it wrong. It should always feel like you're helping someone discover, learn, and as he describes it, you're just opening doors for people. And that's what great sellers do is they understand their audience, they understand the problems their audience has, and they know how to frame or reframe those problems in a way that helps people learn something they didn't know before. And that helps them come closer to the eventuality of, you know what, I need this, and you're the person to help me get there. So it's outcome based. And if you want to sell anything, you need to understand what the person stands to gain, what outcome they stand to complete by buying your product or service. And if you don't have that, restart, do everything. AI can't help you.
Yeah. So it's really about understanding the customer and being able to actually articulate what they need in their own words, right? And I love
Absolutely.
what you said about like helping people make a decision. That's what great salespeople do actually. But now we have AI, which actually does help a lot in helping us learn more about the customer. But I think in our prep we also talked about how listening is really
Yeah.
the separator. I think of good to great, right? So. Um, Tell me more about where you've seen real value in how AI has supported reps with, their selling or storytelling or listening, that kind of thing.
One of my favorite places to use it is in pre-call preparation. So I can throw a bunch of links. I can copy and paste an entire website into a chat and say and give it the prompts that I want for the information I need to be informed. That's huge, and that's cut my prep down from 15 to 20, 30 minutes, depending on what it is, to a couple of minutes. And that's huge for those that like to prepare. That's a massive, massive windfall because when you get on a phone with somebody and you know about them, it builds a lot more trust. So that's probably the first place. Next thing I think is really important is identifying patterns. As we know, AI has access to all of the information that anybody has put in and probably some more that we don't even know about. It's able to find patterns faster than you can. So if you feed it information around, like, let's say, as an example, would be call scripts pardon me, call recordings. If you have all the recordings that you've had with your clients over the past 2, 3, 6 months, year, 2 years, and you throw those transcripts in, asking it to help you find patterns about language, about pain points, about objections, the amount of things you can actually learn to improve from finding those patterns can be massive, massive to your sales organization. Like, where did we miss questions? You'll know where to train your team. That stuff could be illuminating to have better conversations with your customers. And then the other piece here on top of that is you can know what messaging to use. So we talked a little bit about earlier with the how to think through like storytelling and what do the best people do? The key there is the better that you can understand how to speak to your customer in their own words, as you said, Laura, is the more likely it is that they're going to know you're different. You're actually paying attention. Let's talk to you because you understand the problems and it's worth having a conversation. So those would be the first actual places I think. But again, those are tools that match with a skill set of understanding what the inputs need to be in order to get that information at scale. And I think a lot of folks, not everybody, but a lot of folks don't bother messing with the fundamentals at all. They just think, oh, I have this tool. It'll tell me what the ICP is. It'll tell me what they need. It'll tell me how to sell this thing. And in some ways, it can help you, but it can very quickly just pull you in the wrong direction because you don't know what the actual basic thing is in order to make it. It's like making soup with no water. If you boil all these vegetables, you probably just burn them. But it
Mm.
is soup, right? Like that's the whole idea. But if water is the foundational element of making a soup, let's put some water in first.
I definitely want to double click on that, but just
Mhm.
to rewind kind of what you said about, how AI is making meaningful value. What I'm hearing you say is that it it helps curious people find information faster, find
Yes.
trends,
Yep.
pivot faster because all of the information is out at our fingertips. And if we learn to be really curious about what it is we're looking for, and how we use it. And I always say that the best salespeople are really the ones that are the most curious. Like they're always asking, like, why, how, when, that
I mean,
kind of
more
thing.
about that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Tell
Agreed.
me more about that. That's very interesting. But let's actually talk about sort of what you said. Like if you don't know how to use it, and uh, we I think talked about how AI can make the best reps worse. Sorry, the worst reps worse faster.
Faster
Right,
at
yeah,
scale.
and
Yeah.
yeah, egg scale, and so tell us more about what you mean by that.
So an example would be somebody who's using AI, they might say, write me a cold email campaign for CEOs in this industry. Okay, you'll get something. And then the worst part is they'll probably send that versus a better input. And again, we could scale this up in context, right? But just a quick example would be given that this is our ICP and you label with the ICP, it's CEOs that are in the ages between 40 and 51 years old. They're mostly female. They have a tenure of 5 to 7 years in that role. Their deal is in this particular stage. This is the risk we've identified inside of this company. And here are the use cases we've identified. Taking this particular information, can you reframe 3 ways that we can create a value proposition that resonates with this type of person? Now, again, still a lot of work to do once we have that, but the amount of specificity that you take in with right, we got the water level right for our soup. Hey, this is what we know for sure is who we're trying to sell to. What are the different flourishes that we want to add to this soup to be appetizing for a conversation with that CEO? And so I say that all to say, you ask it for a couple of versions, and then you pick from those parts and pieces and you build something that you think will work really well. And then you have versions that you can then test. So one big thing I also want to put out for any person who's in sales, thinking about selling in this market or whatever else, one way is not the only way. There's so many ways to do it. So because you have a tool like this, it behooves you, in my opinion, to make multiple versions to test with smaller groups to see what messaging works and then scale up. I've worked with a lot of companies and people are like, oh, I downloaded a list of 3,000 leads. I'm ready to hit them all with this message. It's like, stop, 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 stop. Take 10 people and test 3 different messaging campaigns with each. Test the metrics, which one gets better open rates, which one gets reply rates. And then we double down a little bit more and we extend and we go that up until we get to some place where we can have some confidence to say, we're getting consistent open rate here. We're getting consistent replies and this messaging is landing. You have the capacity. This used to take months and months to do in the old days. Now you could do this in a couple of hours. Use that to scale up the right thing so it goes confidently in the right direction. And so that's
Mhm.
one of the ways I think reps could be using it better. And I think when they do use that, it brings context, it brings in constraints, and it expands AI's actual ability to think within the bounds of what's useful for the conversation you want to have with your prospects.
Yeah. It actually does sound a lot like, that, hey, if you were a great rep, you would actually do this anyway because that's what you would do in real life, right? You would take your prospects and you would customize the message, and
Ideally
now you're
speaking.
just using now you're just using AI. I mean, that's what you would do if you were a good rep.
Yeah.
But if you were, not so a good rep, then what do those people usually do? Like I think the reps that are on low end of the scale, they try to have a generic approach, right,
Hmm.
to every customer, and this just helps them do that generic approach like faster. Um,
Yeah. Writing emails faster that still don't convert.
yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So let's talk about the fact that there are all of these AI tools that are flooding the market. It's not just the ChatGPT, but it's also or Claude, right? It's also like specific AI tools that are made for go-to-market teams and for salespeople. Um, let's say everybody has the same tools, which a lot of us have access to, a lot of them, right? How does that impact storytelling and human connection? And how can we mitigate it?
I think this is going to be an eternal question, but the main piece here is stories help drive decisions. Okay.
Mm.
That's the main piece here. So buyers don't think in features, they think in what happens next. And stories are a way to kind of simulate the future and give people a picture of what it looks like. There's a quote I love. It's by a guy named Horace. It's one of these Greek philosophers. Believe it or not, that's actually his name. That's at least what they translated it. And he says, "You need change only the name, and the story's about you." So I could tell you every bell and whistle that my thing has, but you don't really care unless you understand the context of how it's going to work for someone like you. And that's one of the places I think that's really important to leverage a story. Another thing is it's there to help you. Like when if we talked in our last conversation about now that everybody has AI tools, AI is the floor, right? Everybody's kind of got it. So it's table stakes at this point. It's just how do you use it better? If it's the floor, then judgment, taste, and trust are going to move that ceiling. And if you actually are a person who genuinely cares about your customers and what their needs are, that's always going to bleed through in a noisy marketplace. And that's the thing. So if everybody can use these tools and throw stuff out all the time, the only thing you have left is being real. And that's where I say, where I'm doubling down on my strategies are getting me in a room with people and being around people and being at seminars and doing more human things. AI are great tools to help me do that faster or get to those places faster. But what are people going to buy? We're humans solving human problems in a business context. And until it's robots solving robot problems, buying robot solutions, we still have to sell to people. And I think being real and using the tools so you can get yourself in more real situations and circumstances that demonstrate your judgment, your taste, and your candor, that's where you're going to be competitive. And I don't think most people are willing to take the time to do that. And that's where I think the floor is it's very easy to jump off the floor and get to the ceiling if you have that type of mindset.
I really like the words that you judgment, taste, and trust. I think is
Hmm.
what you said,
Yep.
right?
Judgment, taste, trust.
And judgment and taste and trust actually have always been things that we secretly look for when we hire, but we're just not able to kind of put our finger on it. Do you think that AI can actually help us with assessing for those things?
Yeah, of course it can. But again, you need to teach it what to look for,
Yeah,
right?
tell us more
So an example I gave a little earlier was looking at transcripts from sales calls.
about.
If you have written out in a really clear job description of what you want, and you have clear ideas of what your company culture is and who you've had has other successful hires, and you have transcripts from those calls that you've recorded with that person. And if you were to feed that into the system and say, we're looking for a person who demonstrates similar cultural values, has these skill sets, here's a couple of resumes we have and here's what we've said. Now we can start to help it recognize more patterns and give us a guidepost. Now, one thing I think is really important here, the more information it has is the better it can give you and be more prescriptive with what you need. But I always say, check it. Go and have a review. If you have it make content for you, please go in and edit it. Like it's not it's not the answer, it's an answer, and your judgment, your taste, and your ability to build trust are what make it useful in the context in which you can present it. So if you're looking for great candidates, feed it with good information, but definitely be discerning to say, this is why I think this is a good candidate. And this is why I want to talk to this person. Or if it says this person is not a good candidate and your gut says it still is, still trust that gut and verify.
Yeah. So that's like that is like a way that we can really, I guess, put the reins and guardrails around AI, where to make sure that we are consistently training and checking and verifying, what it's giving us, so that it doesn't kind of go rogue on us, right? and
That's it.
and whether it's in sales or in using it, I think that's really like the model for good, for good best practice, model for like good organizational best practice. Whatever it is you get, trust and teach, right? So that the next time the output comes back, it's different.
One other thing I want to add on that, I've been reading, there's a guy I follow, Tom Bilyeu. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No, I
Has
haven't.
a podcast called The Impact Theory. He had a couple of posts that came out about how to use AI. And one of the things I really liked was it said, never take the first answer,
Mhm,
always challenge it
mhm,
and ask it to straw man its own argument or steel man, whichever the
mhm,
one of going opposite. Like, what
mhm.
would I have missed here?
Right, right, right,
So
right.
especially if we're talking about hiring, right? We have
Yes.
our gut. Oh, I love this person. They have great background. They're super charismatic. They think they understand. What would be the opposite way I should consider this person? And what are some good questions to potentially ask a person like this to
Mm,
uncover these things? And
mhm.
so that's where I think it's an incredible tool if you can use it for that type of context and get that first level of ideas. And again, since we're talking about people here, they're the most interesting, most difficult, and best and most fascinating part of any business. Because if you find the right ones, the amount of things that can happen in your business are incredible. But I just want to make sure I'm adding that piece to it is making sure we test our own decision making and we have a tool that can immediately push us back with feedback. That's a great way to
Mm,
leverage, whether
mhm,
that's hiring, whether that's your messaging you're putting out to an ICP, right? We said 45 to 51-year-old CEOs and this, whatever. What are things that I should consider when getting in front of a person like this that I might not have considered? And it may tell you these people answer the phone. Don't send them emails or et cetera, right? Like that's a way that you can take your high level thinking and then figure out what your blind spots are. And I think that's what great reps or any person, whatever you sell, whatever you use, however you serve people, that can be a huge boon to the confidence that you can bring to any relationship.
right, right. Awesome. All right, Stephen, last question before we pivot a little bit.
Yep.
If you were advising a go-to-market organization right now, and they were in the process of, turning into an AI native sales organization, where would you suggest that they start, and what would be some mitigations that you would ask them to carefully consider, to
Huge
make sure they
question. Huge
don't go
question.
down the wrong path? Yeah.
I would start with the most basic thing. Use it to take in what you understand about the customers that you've served before, the goals you have for the organization, look at calls and stuff that you've made that you've recorded and train your team. Train your team. I've worked with a lot of companies and the overwhelming majority from $1 million in revenue to a couple $1 billion in revenue all the way through. Most of them just expect people to get it because I hired you for sales, just sell some deals. And so you have this tool that can synthesize a lot of incredible information quickly. Use it to create a digestible way to build people into your organization's culture, understand who your customers are and what they need. That's level one. And that's probably the biggest de-risk because when they get on the phone with customers, they know what to say, how to say it, and what the context is. So that'd be my first piece. The second thing I would say is probably have a meeting every week with your sales team where you go over what prompts have been useful or helpful in you preparing for calls. Make that a team conversation around how people are using and getting the best out of the tools. Because you hire people because they're A players, they're smart, and they think creatively. Bring that into the team and reward people for that if they find something that's useful and interesting. The other thing I would say is fundamentals are fundamental for a reason. So we can only scale up, or we should only scale up what works well. And it should be a constant review, and AI could be a tool for that, of what's working really well and what's worth doubling down on. Those would be the places I would start. And then the rest, you come talk to me, we'll figure it out. But that's where I would start.
Okay, awesome. All right, Stephen, let's learn a little bit more about you. So, you're the author of Superpower Storytelling.
Indeed.
First, tell us about that book. What's
It's thank you for asking. It took me about 18 months to write because I didn't have AI at the time. It was still
Yes.
new,
Yes.
which was funny. But I did use it for the bibliography because that's one of the worst parts of the
Mhm.
entire writing process I remember from college. But I wrote the book because it's titled Superpower Storytelling, a tactical guide to telling the stories you need to lead, sell, and inspire. Because I started a lot of my career working with, in consulting anyway, working with lots of early stage startups. Some had seed funding, some were Series A, Series B. And I would listen to their phone calls, I would read their emails, and I would coach them on being better at sales. And one of the most consistent things I would see is they continually just talk about the feature or widget that they built. That's the thing. They're on the demo and they're just talking about this widget, that widget, that widget. And it's obviously not landing. And then I asked them a little bit more when I pressed them. I was like, can I ask you, why did you build this company? And they're like, well, we built it because this this is a problem that I experienced at my last company. And this was what caused 15 people to be laid off when they didn't need to be laid off, or whatever that thing is. And I was like, why aren't you telling that story on the call? That's going to resonate with them.
Hmm.
Try it. Just try it. Just for a quick second when you're on them, when you're introducing the company, say, hey, this is why we built the company. See what happens. And they're like, that really worked. They're really excited about it. They understand why we want to do this. And so seeing that more and more and more, and then also seeing on my own sales life, it's such a low hanging piece of fruit to be able to show and be human about what it is that you're doing. And so what I think is really interesting, there's so many companies in the same sector. There's tons of AI companies, there's tons of consultancies, there's tons of agencies. But even if we do the same thing and provide the same outcome for a client, the way we do it and our story is a differentiator. And so I always say the most interesting thing about what you do is who you are. And if that's not a part of how you're explaining what you do, I don't care. And so I wrote that book in order to kind of formalize some of the thinking around it and to equip anybody, right? When I say salespeople, you're a salesperson if you're a project manager in a company and you want them to work on your project. It's not just people hunting revenue. If you need to help someone make a decision, a story is a great way to get there because it creates the emotional scaffolding for someone to make a decision. That's all you want. You want someone to decide. Hopefully, it's a yes and it's what you want. Sometimes it's a no, and a no is great. A fast no is better than a slow maybe all the
Correct.
time.
Yes, absolutely.
So I say that to say I created that book to share some of the stories I've seen around my business career and my life, and just to help people create a very simple framework for thinking through how they have conversations with the people they talk to and the audiences they're going to encounter in their business life.
Fantastic. And I also know that you're in the process of writing another book.
I am. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm writing another book. It's called 7 Minute Sales,
Wow.
77 sales lessons that you can implement in 7 minutes or less.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And you're using AI for that now, since
I
you're
am using some AI for that. Yeah, it's great with editing. It's great with taking like horrible notes that I've compiled over
Mhm.
the years and making them cogent. But yeah, the editing process, I'm about a third done with it now.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
And when can we look forward to that one?
Put me on the spot here, Laura. I'm gonna say I hope to have it completed by the end of the year,
Okay,
maybe
fantastic.
sooner.
So like a launch date sometime, maybe like in mid next year or something like that.
Yeah, maybe soon. I'm self-publishing, so as soon as it's done, I'm getting it off my plate and I'm finished. But yeah, maybe end of year or early next. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Well, you have to come back and talk about it.
I would love to. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. All right, Stephen, thank you so much for being on the show. Any last words before we close up here?
Number one, thank you again for having me. This is a super fun conversation. I love what you're doing here. My parting words would be, remember that AI is a tool, and when used in the right hands, it can create incredible opportunities for you and everybody you work with. If you do not apply the right context to it, it'll move you very, very confidently in the wrong direction at scale. So use it wisely and use it to do what you do well already and take that to the next level. That's what I'd say. Thanks for having me, Laura.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephen. And to our audience, if you like this episode, please leave us a comment, subscribe, follow. Otherwise, we will see you next time. Thank you.
Peace.